Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Today we have Mr. Azhar Hew, who is the Group CEO of Rockwills. Thanks so much for being on the show today, Mr. Azhar.
Welcome, Anas. Thanks for inviting me.
Excellent. Mr. Azhar, can I just start off with what do you do at Rockwills and what does Rockwills do?
All right. Well, my position is, as you mentioned just now, was I'm the Group CEO of Rockwills. What we do at Rockwills is we started in 1995. This year is actually our 25th year in operation. We started off as a will writing company. Then over the years, we included trust as one of our services. And right now, we have got different companies servicing different segments of the market. For example, we have an advisory company called Rockwills Advisory Services that specializes in high net worth clients requiring more complex solution, more complete solution for assets that are in Malaysia, assets that are overseas, but also succession of family businesses for generations. We still do will, of course, that's our bread and butter. Trust is something that we started on our own in year 2005. But prior to 2005, we had a partnership with VHLB Trustee, which is now part of another banking group because of the bank merger quite some time ago. So wills and wills trusts are still our bread and butter. That's the only main service that we provide to our clients.
Great. You know, one of the things that one cannot get away from is the final checkout, so to speak, in Malaysia or in life. And will writing doesn't usually hit most people until when they absolutely need it. And unfortunately, at that point in time, it may not necessarily be the most optimal time to do so. But I just wanted to ask you with regard to the basics first, so that our listeners can have an idea as to what is a will and is a will important?
Sure. Well, what's a will? A will is put it in a very layman term, it's a document which you would write stating your wishes as to how would you want your assets to be given out to your beneficiaries, at what point in time during their life, and upon this distribution, of course, will take place upon your death. But you write all these wishes down in this will document, which you will sign together with two witnesses. What happens is that this document, since it's a wish, it's not a contract, you could easily change it during your lifetime. If you decide, I don't need this will anymore, because let's say, for example, you find that you no longer own anything, or you decide to make life difficult for your beneficiaries, you could actually just revoke your will, just like that during your lifetime, by tearing it, or by simply redoing a new will. So will, it's a very flexible document. It's a document you sign today with the witnesses. It only takes effect upon death. You've got the ability to make changes for it at any point in time. It will cover assets that you own now and even future assets that you may own. Of course, with future assets, you won't be able to name what type of assets, but there is always a clause in the will that would cover these assets that are not named in the will, that are applicable, that you have at the point of death. We call it the Residue Clause that every will should have, that you can give to your beneficiaries. This will applies to Muslims and non-Muslims. With Muslims, there's a bit of a restriction, of course, because you can only will away 1/3 of your wealth to non-heirs according to the Islamic law, and automatically the 2/3 will be given to the Islamic heirs that are determined under the faraid distribution, which is commonly the spouse, the son, the daughter, the father, the mother, these group of people. Beyond that, it will be the siblings and and so on and so forth.
Is having a will important, Mr. Azhar?
Yeah, it is important because the will represents your instructions about how you want to give your assets away to your beneficiaries. Because if you don't have a will, then the intestate laws would come in, where you do not have a say at all. It's all predetermined for you. The problem with intestacy law is that there tends to be a lot of fighting among beneficiaries sometimes, because there are no instructions left behind who's supposed to be in charge. In addition to, there's fragmentation of the wealth, mainly, for example, company shares, where you have siblings having or children having a share in the company. There is no no clear instruction as to who is to be the CEO of the company, who leads the company. That's one. If it's property, you can imagine if you have got 5-6 shop lots and residential properties, and if your children, 3 or 4 of them, all share those properties, they'll get married, they'll have children. So any one of them passes on, maybe with a will, without a will, their family will take that child's portion in each and every of those property. So that would lead to a lot of fragmentation, potentially a lot of disagreement as well with regards to how to deal with that property, whether to sell, to rent, or who to stay in it. Whenever there are money involved, Ernest, I usually tell clients, do take note that we have to be careful in planning, because very often money is thicker than blood at the end of the day, rather than blood is thicker than all that. So they tend to fight. So having a will, you leave very clear instruction as to who is going to be a beneficiary, who is going to get what part of your estate. You also get a chance to name who is going to be your executor, the one to take charge to distribute your assets, because this executor plays a very important role. When you're around, you are the captain of the ship, but when you're no longer around, the captain of the ship to lead things and to complete the instructions would be that executor. So without that captain, it'll all go haywire. You get lost in sea and whatnot. If you have minor children, then it's important to name someone that you think would be able to look after your children that are below the age of 21, to provide love, care, and also have, money on their own to look after your children. If you think that they may not have sufficient finances, then in your will you could spell out giving the guardian a certain amount of money every month as an allowance, and a certain amount of money being reserved for the children's daily expenses, education, and medical needs. So the will is very important at the end of the day. We have wills that are written that can be as thick as 50 pages with a variety of complex instruction. We also have clients whose family is not very complex. There are not many assets, which there could be a 2-3 pager type of will, because the children are all grown up and probably there's only one child, so nothing to fight. If you have many children, then it's a different story. Then it's better to spell out things clearly.
If a person were to pass on with the will, is the instruction definitive, meaning that it's going to be followed to the T? Can it be contested? Can someone raise a stink by saying, no, that's not what that person who deceased told me. He told me or she told me this is actually what they wanted, but there's a document instruction that's differing from the verbal wishes that was conveyed to someone else, apparently.
When the will is signed properly by, we call it the testator, the one who does the will, when the will is signed by him in the presence of 2 witnesses, right, 2 independent persons as witnesses, these 2 witnesses would have to sign that document as well, that will as well. So therefore, in the event where this testator dies, the 2 witnesses are to execute affidavits to declare that they've seen this testator sign his will and he is of sound mind. Though they may not know the contents of the will, but they have to sign it to tell the court that the testator is of sound mind, and there appears no hanky-panky, in the sense that there was no duress, no fraud, no misrepresentation whatsoever being done to that testator when he signs the will. So what happens that will, I guess, if it's not, no one challenges it on any grounds, is definitive. But just like any legal document, however beautifully it is crafted or prepared, it is open for challenge. The main question is, when it is challenged in court, will your document withstand in court to be legal? Are there evidence as such that it would prevent it from being invalid? Give an example. If I have a client whose distribution in the will is quite controversial, instead of giving each and every of the children certain assets, the client decides to give to a godson. The children doesn't get anything, but the godson gets it. The client is lucid, sound mind. There's no illness, no medication involved. The client is not too old as well, probably maybe in the 60s, right? But the client, it's very clear in his instruction, he would like to give to the godson. So as a precaution, you may want to take steps, for example, getting witnesses, of course, very important, as well as recording the signing of the will session, where the testator signs together with witnesses, so that provides some sort of degree of evidence to prove that will was signed proper. The contents represents what the testator wants. So it makes it a bit difficult for those family members, the children, to argue that we're not happy with this. As you know, they've got we've got no bullets in that sense. Yeah?
Difficult is it to get a will done, Mr. Azhar? Is it a very complex process?
Again, depending on your intention, after discussion with a professional estate planner, as to what kind of will you want. There are, of course, very basic wills that you can do with a 2-3 pager thing. There are, as I mentioned, there are sometimes very comprehensive, up to 50 pages or more. All depends on, after that discussion, what kind of contents would you want to put in. The more average type of will generally will take you, I guess 2-3 days to get it prepared. Not a very long time. But usually for Rockwheels, when we look at preparing wills for client, we don't want client to rush into getting that will done without really understanding the contents. So clients who are in a rush, for example, I'm going for an operation tomorrow morning, and you get it done I would like to sign it tonight. I'm giving you instruction this morning, but I would like to sign it tonight. Usually we are a bit hesitant to do that. We worry about the client's mental capacity, that he may not have thought it through before he signs it. So doing a will, it's not a very complex exercise, pretty simple exercise. And the main thing is to get someone to be able to advise you, to give you suggestions as to what can be done.
As a testator or potential testator, what do they have to prepare beforehand, before speaking to an advisor from Rockwheels?
Yeah, you could think about who would, number one, obviously, would be who you want to be the executor of your estate, the one who will take charge to distribute. You could pick out 1 or 2 family members. If you have doubts whether your family members are capable of acting as an executor, mindful that in Malaysia there is actually no guidance provided for an individual to act as an executor. There are no proper law books on, or rather an idiot's guide to executorship. You don't have that in Malaysia. You are basically going to do a lot of trial and error. You think, you worry about the ability of the person, then you may appoint a trust company. So there's something that you can look at after discussion with the estate planner. The other bit is that if you have minor children, think about who's going to be the guardian of your minor children. This is something where you have to discuss with your spouse. This guardian will come in when both husband and wife are no longer around. Who's that third party is going to look after the children? It would be better if both husband and wife concur on the same person, agree on the same person, and how much would you want to pay allowance to this person. The last bit would be, which is the simplest one, I think, is who's going to get what asset and when are they going to get those assets. Those are not so difficult, but I think the executor and guardian bit tend to be the one that stumps some of our clients like, okay, who do I decide to be the executor and the trustee? Because the responsibility is heavy.
It does appear that it is not something that one should take very lightly, that one should just be frivolously writing, because this is really a very impactful document on your survivors.
Correct. So you will need an advisor, someone who can, an experienced estate planner, to guide you and to sit down with you to plan it through proper, so that you have a will that represents your instructions to be carried out by the executor. Of course, this instruction over time may change depending on the family situation. As the kids grow up, you may want to give them in a different way. As the kids grow up, they may be more spendthrift, then you may want to give them lesser or control their spending. As you may get more and more assets which are not covered in the will, for example, you may want to specifically give it to a family member to get it. You may also want to look at giving some money to charities that you never thought of previously, but now the children have grown up. You decide, okay, they don't need so much, but I want to give part of my assets to charities. You could be changing your will over time to do this.
Mr. Azhar, if for instance a person or testator wrote a will, say in 2010, and then another will in 2020, do both wills come into effect, or only the latest one?
It will be the latest will that will be valid. Under our Malaysian Wills Act 1959, it states that the latest dated will would be the valid will. The earlier wills are all revoked by this later will.
So, Azhar, is there a pressing need for will writing services right now? The reason being because there is a lot of challenges with what's happening around the world, what's happening with the global economy, pandemics. Do you see will writing as a service that all of a sudden has a lot more interest, or you still see that it's a day in, day out same business demand so far?
The demand is it's higher than usual because of the infection rates around the world due to the COVID-19. Unfortunately, because of the MCO, the signing of the will can only be done after the MCO have been lifted. But we encourage clients to begin thinking about those points that I mentioned earlier: who's to be executor, guardian. Start finding out which professional estate planner would you want to meet up. If you don't know, there's always websites that you can go through that make inquiries. Then once the MCO over, then you could get the will being signed off proper. The draft could even be sent during MCO for the testator to look through and all that prior to signing. We don't recommend the will being signed during MCO. One is the issue about witnesses. The two witnesses that you're supposed to get, the law says that if you were to get beneficiary's name in the will, or the beneficiary spouse that are named in the will, if you get them to be witnesses, then it will result in the beneficiary name in the will forfeiting his or her inheritance. So if I were to name my son as a beneficiary in my will, I get his wife to be a witness, it will result in my son forfeiting his inheritance. And during MCO, you have a lockdown with your family. I don't know whether your neighbor is willing to even see you and get it signed as a witness, because maybe we worry whether you're infected or not.
Absolutely.
So getting a witness is an issue. So it's best to wait for when the lockdown is over to get the will signed properly. And everything could be done before that, just matter of signing after the MCO is over.